The art of freestyle. It's one hell of a thing. Far more advanced than anything that a musician would have to do with their instrument. You start freestyling with the guitar, you're playing melody, oh, fine. Same with the piano, fine. Fine, whatever the instrument is. But when you're dealing with words, it's a whole nother story now. It's just not just about rhythm. See, because when you're dealing with an instrument, you're dealing with rhythm. So, remove words, and if I want, I can go, a sinner breaking the sinner, a timid, a feeling, no. I'm feeling, a feeling, a reeling, a telling, a pill. I killed, built, so, a feel, till, a demand. We could do this all day. I could do this all day. And come up with 10 never-ending different methods and flows. And when you have to say something, it's a very different thing now. What are you going to say? Generally, we end up most of us say absolutely nothing because, it's just, not all the time, but it's hard enough to come up with something to say and make it rap, let alone come up with something substantive. But it can be done. It has been done. I've done it. What I want to talk about is, in doing this, and all across the board, the musician, the rapper, the dancer, will all confess, even the athlete, I suppose, will all confess that there is I guess I'll call it an element of flow state, right? But not just that, there is some kind of activation that takes place where it almost seems, and this could go for the artist too, the illustrator, any creative endeavor or whatever the fuck. It almost seems that you have gained access to something that you regularly do not have. You've revved the engine up, and now the car is going. So it gets to a place where it's no longer an effort, but you're kind of going along for the ride. It's doing it on its own you have now gained access. You've become a step ahead of it now. Now something has activated that you're not behind, because when you're freestyling, the thought is you're behind the thought, meaning where it's like, I'm standing in front of the camera, I'm telling this story. Now, before I got to the word story, slightly before, my mind started thinking, I'm going to have to come up with something that rhymes with story. When you get access to that, I don't know what to call it, but that thing that brings you to function on a higher level, you way before the story part. You like 3 lines ahead before you even, which brings me to, and now when you are that much ahead, now you can construct it a lot better. I've got to activation levels where I've been able to come up with punchlines. Was able to come up with stories, freestyle, all sorts of things. But you got to warm up. You got to get into that space. And when my crew, when I was living that, in those developmental years, this was something we did on a regular basis. I was in that space. When you become a more concentrated, focused artist, you start to care a little less for freestyling. I did, but there's something a lot more important that I want to touch on through this. So the activation takes place. You're in that space where you are ahead of yourself. this thing is running on its own now, right? You're kind of just going along for the ride. The dancer will know what I'm talking about. The dancer will understand that when you, at some point, the music, you've never danced this great in your life. You could not do this again if you wanted to. This is what I'm talking about. You cannot just duplicate this and replicate this at will. That's the difference. I can give you a rinky dinkin fucking freestyle at any point in time. I could start freestyle rapping at any, but these moments, the dancer, when he danced the greatest that he ever danced, it was because the music took over. But the music and the feel for the music, there was something a lot deeper that went on there. I don't fully know what it is, but I want to talk about an extraordinary example of that, which is the written rhyme that is presented in the dream. Really stop for a second and understand what I'm talking about. Really take this in and understand the implications. We know how difficult it is to freestyle. We know how difficult it is to write, even when you're concentrating, right? Whether you use a pen and a pad, the phone, whatever it is, this takes, stop what I'm doing. I gotta really think about what's going on. I gotta make a concerted effort to construct this. What constructed it like that while you were asleep? What went? So I'm talking about the activation and when you are conscious that allows you to be a few lines ahead, gives you a slight edge. Now you can kick a decent freestyle. You could have a moment that you're proud of. To you're not even the conscious mind. You're not. You're asleep. What constructed a full-fledged written out rhyme in a matter of, I don't know, instantaneously? If you are truly processing the immensity of what I'm saying, of what is taking place in the example I'm presenting, you should be pretty. It's astounding. The mind, I don't know if it's the mind, the brain, maybe it's fed from a different, I don't know where it, I can't pretend to tell you I know or understand, but for it to be fully crafted, instantaneously, no flaws, at the very least, it speaks to the untapped potential that we have in the human mind, the brain, whatever it is, you know. At most, it would lend way to the idea of something greater than ourselves. I mean, we what is consciousness? We don't understand consciousness. I mean, what is feeding us that thing? Suppose there's a scientific explanation. Do we use, maybe the brain is operating at a higher capacity when we are asleep? I don't know, but I know it has happened to me, and I woke up saying that this is something truly phenomenal. Because it's one thing for it to be, it's like I said, it's one thing for you to create a melody. It's even another thing for you to create a dance move in your sleep, or awake or asleep, whatever. It's a different thing entirely when you are dealing with word and you're dealing with thought, because there's more dimension to it. maybe it might be comparable. I didn't really think this out, but it might be comparable to an elaborate drawing, perhaps. I don't know. There's a lot of dimension to the spoken word. There's a lot there. And now when you're dealing with spoken word in rhyme form, that's one hell of a thing to be created instantaneously while unconscious. I think it's something worth thinking about.